Hello, I'm Seth Seward of the Miami University Alumni Association, and thank you for joining us today for this panel, sponsored by the Alumni Association and our campus partners as part of Miami's First Generation College Celebration Day. Yesterday was the official National First Generation College Celebration, held annually to honor students who are first in their families to go to college. Thanks to you who have submitted questions ahead of time, and we also want your participation live. Feel free to ask questions using the Ask Question button below the video, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Now I'd like to introduce to our co-moderators for today's panel. Bre Peskin is a junior social work major with a minor in gerontology. She is a first-generation student from Cincinnati, Ohio, and she is also the president of Miami's First here on campus. Also joining us is her roommate, Lindsey. Lindsey is a sophomore individualized studies major with a focus on environmental biology, zoology, and conservation. She is also a first-generation student from Northwest Ohio and is the vice president of the club Miami First. Miami First is a co-curricular organization open to any enrolled Miami student who identifies as first generation and any enrolled Miami student who supports the ideas of the organization. Bre and Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us today, and I will turn over to you to introduce our panels for today's discussion.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. I know that we have a lot of questions for you, and I know that our viewers will as well, so let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, so first we're going to introduce Bre Robinson. Bre is a dual degree holder from Miami and is entering her 4th year as a member of Miami University staff. She serves as the Assistant Athletic Director for Leadership and Diversity. Bre earned a Bachelors of Science degree in 2008 and a Masters of Science degree in 2011 in Health Promotion from Miami.
Kierra Williams is a Senior Program Manager, Talent Management from Amazon Web Services. Kierra is the founder and president of the Kindred Canvas Foundation, which is a nonprofit centered around the arts and civic engagement that sponsors an annual scholarship for students pursuing post-secondary art education. She earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in 2011 in psychology and minored in Black World Studies.
And Jose Jacobo is also a dual degree holder from Miami and is the Assistant Resident Hall Director at Miami University. Jose earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Psychology in 2018 and a Master's of Science degree in Student Affairs and Higher Education in 2020. He has been on staff at Miami for over 2 years.
All right, so the first question we have today. So while we just went through like your formal introductions and what you do now, tell us how, as a first-generation college student, you ended up at Miami. Like, where did you grow up? Why Miami? Let's start with Bre.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be joined by Jose as well as Kierra this morning. But a little bit about myself. I'm a native of Toledo, Ohio. I originally was planning to go to either Miami or Dayton. I applied to just those 2 schools, and then I decided on Miami because of the curriculum. My older brother was also here as a student athlete at the time, and the beauty of the campus. And so basically I ended up taking a chance on Miami. I knew that I did not want to go to school in Toledo, where I was from, and it ended up being the best decision that I ever made.
Oh, that was so nice, Bre. Okay, Kierra, do you want to go next? Kierra, I'm sorry. Do you want to go next?
Sure, that's okay. So again, Kierra Williams. I am from Dayton, Ohio. And I actually was a Bridges Scholar. So the real reason why, I think I applied to over 50 colleges, like a lot of first generation college students. I think I had this fear that I don't know why, that I wasn't going to get into any school, right? So I applied to basically every school that came to visit my high school, I applied to. The differentiating factor for why I chose Miami was because I participated in the Bridges program and I got to campus. And growing up inner city, Dayton, Ohio, the first thing that struck me was just how beautiful the campus was. I had never seen anything like it. And then I got to meet people who were also coming from different backgrounds like me, who were interested in going to Miami. So I would say the Bridges program was a huge deciding factor for me.
I love that. I don't have any personal experience with it, but I've heard a lot of people say really great things. All right, Jose, you're up.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and really, I had a scholarship at my high school that ended up carrying over to Miami, and so that really put it on the map for me. And it was actually the only place I ever did a college tour for. So kind of the opposite of Kierra, I really didn't know like where to apply, how many schools to apply to, and so I had about 4 that I applied to, Miami being the only one that I really toured, and I was like, yes, I could see myself here for 4 years. I was also a Bridges scholar, which helped bridge that gap for me as well, which was really awesome. And yeah, I haven't left since I got here in 2014.
Oh,
Okay, so our second question today is, we often talk about the difficulties of being a first-gen student on campus, and we would like to hear what you struggled with when you arrived, but also what were the benefits of being a first-gen student. So who wants to start?
Bre?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Bre. It's you again.
It's okay. It's okay. I don't mind at all. Wow. So I think I struggled the most with time management. When I first got to Miami, I did not mention this earlier, but I was a student athlete during my time here, but I was a walk-on student athlete. And when I first got here, I think I struggled with time management. I had been an athlete my entire life, very structured, 3 sports, always busy, and had someone always helping me manage my time. And so when I came to college, I really struggled with that piece. And it was really helpful for me once I became a part of the student athlete population to be able to have people that were supports to me to really reinforce the time management piece, the organization piece, and help me there. I also think that what people don't often talk about for first generation college students and why it may be difficult is the fact that there's the formal curriculum of higher education. So you have your classes that you take, you know what classes are required in the majors and all of those formal pieces of it. But then there's a hidden curriculum. There are the pieces about meeting with faculty members and why that's important, and tutoring and how to go about scheduling that, and just finding mentors and people who value you, see you, and understand you. And so I think for me, those were some of the really important aspects of how I went from this place of being really unsure of myself and not knowing what to expect to then developing some expectations for myself and developing some relationships with people on campus.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah, those are really helpful things, like how some students might not know that like you should be emailing your professors, and scheduling tutoring can be a little difficult. So that's definitely like a good point to make. All right, Kierra.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. So not only was I a first generation college student from my family, but I was also one of just a handful of foster kids that had come to Miami. So what I struggled the most with was honestly some of the admin paperwork behind housing and financial aid. And, back then everything was still done through snail mail. So all of the additional forms of, you're an independent student, you need a letter from the state saying that you were a ward of the state at 18. And so I struggled with being able to get that information. And then also at the time, it was really strict with like, once you got to mid-semester and you didn't have your financial aid figured out, you ran the risk of not only being canceled from your classes, but also losing your housing. And so that was a really big deal for me. And I struggled through that my first year. I will say the same thing, and a +1 on what Bre said, with being able to find your mentors and finding kind of the people who are invested in helping you out was a huge factor for me, and how I kind of changed that around. And two people who are no longer at Miami, but I know Bre will recognize definitely the names, maybe you too, Jose, but Gerald Yearwood and Dr. John Barry at the time. I had to, as a first generation student, I think you also carry this weight that you have to do everything on your own. And so I kind of had the world on my shoulders. And after I had run into every single obstacle and finally figured out that I couldn't do it alone, I reached out to the two of them who created space, who used their connections at the university, and kind of they put the kibosh on it and said, hold up, right? You're not going to cancel her registration. You're not going to kick her out. And I would also say that's also when I shifted my perspective. So being the first, you definitely have those cuts and bruises of being the first person maybe who's had that issue. And similar to our now Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, I was determined to not be the last person that would have this opportunity, but I did want to be the last person who struggled with this. I didn't want another foster youth coming in behind me to struggle with housing, to struggle with potentially homelessness again, like I did. And so I used that opportunity and that experience to change the process for people who came after me, which I'm really grateful I had that opportunity to do.
That's honestly so amazing.
Very empowering.
Yes, thank you for that. All right, Jose.
Yeah, I would say for me, the biggest thing that I struggled with that doesn't really get looked at too often is being away from home and being away from that family dynamic. So as a first generation college student, like no one in my family had experienced someone really going away before, and that absence of not, being around with your family. And so I was as far in state as I could go, being 4 hours away from Cleveland and not being able to see my family or help them through things that they were going through at home. And so the lack of being with my family was really hard. And then not having like a chosen family sort of established here to help me get through that was probably the biggest thing. But luckily, I got really involved in the Division of Student Life here. And so I was able to find my people through working in the Wilkes Leadership Institute, doing the Scholar Leader program, ultimately becoming a soul as well to help welcome people to Miami, and being a voice for first generation college students and being able to share that experience with them at orientation. So that way they knew that they weren't alone in it, and really like, let's talk about what it means to be first gen, so that when you get here, you sort of know what to expect and know that you at least have this person, your soul, as someone that you can come and talk to in the fall.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I found that kind of nice what you just said, Jose, because you mentioned like being in like different clubs and stuff to like kind of make a family here, and I definitely get that.
All right, so Jose, you were the assistant resident director for Emerson, right? Last year?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was.
well, okay, I lived there. And you were my ARD. So the next question kind of leads into that. So there was like a whole corridor in Emerson that was basically for first generation college students. And I remember picking that because I wanted to, I didn't really understand the concept of like first generation, but I knew that it applied to me. So I really wanted to just try it out and like be with people that were just like me, all a little confused on the process, figuring it out together. So basically, I was wondering if they had anything like that when you were here. And if yes, what was it exactly and why was it beneficial for you? And if not, like what support systems did you use to get through this process? We can start with Bre.
So I do not remember there being any supports of that kind when I was a student at Miami. I really remember, and so I was actually in the Met Quad. I was in Morris Hall as a first year student, but I was in an LLC. I believe it was an LLC, maybe related to interest, just general interest, and not even major, or not being a first generation college student. And I'll share this story, and by no means do I dislike my parents. I have amazing parents, but I remember just the general process of moving and everything that came along with. So you're moving your things in, you're helping, you may have help getting unpacked. And that's what I saw a lot of my peers receiving help with. And I remember that being very impactful for me, that my parents, because they didn't go to 4-year school, they came, they dropped my stuff in my room, and they left. And that was really a big deal for me, because even from a standpoint of getting organized, understanding like what meetings I needed to go to and who I needed to talk to, who my RA was and what that meant for me was really big. And I remember a lot of my peers understanding some of those nuanced pieces and just really feeling like I wasn't stable when I got started. And so I do not remember those resources being here, but again, there were resources like Gerald Yearwood and many people across the institution who were there and helpful to me to be able to reach out to, as well in the Ranella Learning Center, individuals who were very helpful as supports as I transitioned in and people that I could ask questions to.
Well, I'm glad there was people here to help. I'm glad now also that we have probably a stronger support system. And also unpacking takes so long. I'm so sorry you had to do that by yourself.
It takes forever.
It takes so long. I cannot imagine.
It's the worst part, really.
Yeah. All right,
It is,
Kierra.
and I think for
Oh,
myself,
sorry, yes.
oh no, it's okay. One of the things
No,
I was
you're
going to share is that when my younger brother, who's now in his 4th year here, when he moved in, I made sure that I helped in that way. I explained that to parents. I don't know if they fully understood it, but I did. I helped him unpack because that was something that was meaningful to me, and then tried to help him understand that there were other things, as I mentioned, a part of the hidden curriculum that he wouldn't necessarily understand, but encourage him and empower him to ask questions.
Yeah. All right. Kierra?
Yeah, I'll keep mine brief because I think Bre and I actually overlapped for a little bit. And so, no, we didn't have that. Not that I knew of. I lived in Havikhurst my freshman year. And I got to be honest, when it came down to picking the learning communities, or I think mine was actually like health and fitness, which was interesting because Havikhurst was like at the time the dorm that was furthest away from the fitness center, so you had to kind of walk to get there. But I really chose Havikhurst, won't lie, because they had central air, and it was also one of the only dorms on campus that had central air. But to piggyback off of Bre, I would say I did find those resources though. And I think I would say, based on our experience, I love that you all have that community. And I love that that we've solved for helping to bridge the gap between those who may be experiencing something new and different and having that community when you get on campus. So I think that's really awesome that you all have that now.
Yeah. All right, Jose?
Yeah, so when I got here in 2014, we did not have a community for first generation college students. So I was in Red Hawk Traditions over in Thompson Hall. So that's where I lived. And so there wasn't really a community built around that. And really my identity formation around first gen came through like working in student life. And so when I decided to be here for graduate school, Miami First, the affinity group that Amber was in, was actually going to be in its first year. So I actually got to help get that started. And I felt it was really important to like have first gen students, a first gen student like on staff. So that way, you know, I could at least talk to what it was like being a first gen student here and helping get established. And so Katie, my supervisor, and I really like reached out to stakeholders around campus because we're like, this is really important. We want to make sure we get this off the ground so that students feel supported and can have someone that they know shared the same experiences that they did. And so we also hired first generation RAs and stuff like that as well. And so I'm really excited because I mean, I like to say this as someone in residence life. I was a really bad resident my first year. Like I didn't know what my RD did. I didn't know who my RA was. I didn't know what their jobs were. And I like avoided meetings with them. And so as much as I could to educate like first gen students and just first years in general, like what it means to like have an RA and an RD to go to, I wanted to make sure like that was said right off the bat so that they had that support built in day one on move-in day.
And I remember that being so important to me when I was living there because, so I guess Renee was my RA. So she, like her being a first generation student made the whole experience like more comforting, I suppose, the building and the staff that like wanted me to succeed and understood where I was coming from in every aspect.
Yeah,
So
I think it's also a good like bonding point for someone. Like the fact that we're all first gens, like we can all be like, oh yeah, even though we're confused at different times, we've all been confused, and we all have those moments. Okay, so our next question is for all of you, but I'm gonna start with Bre. What qualities of being a first generation student helped you get where you get to where you are today in your career?
I think not knowing, right? And then another thing is, I would say, having to problem solve. So not knowing the answers and not having all of it figured out, and having to embrace that ambiguity, as well as being challenged to be able to solve the problems. I like to describe myself today as a professional problem solver. So I definitely would attribute some of those things to where I am today in my career.
I like that term, professional problem solver.
Yes.
All right, Kierra?
Yeah, so I would +1 to everything that Bre just said, and I would add something else that I've leaned on heavily is my ability to make connections. Because I was the first, that meant I had to make connections with a lot of people, not just people who were similar to me, but people who were different, who had a different perspective, who had maybe the experiences, the resources and tools that I think I could leverage to change where I was to where I wanted to go and help bridge that gap. And I would say, in my career, it's been constantly, yes, being a problem solver, being able to move around, but a lot of my ability to strategically move around in my career has also been the connections that I've been able to make with other people with different backgrounds, different perspectives too.
I think that's so important, being able to like collaborate and actually like thoroughly understand other people's perspectives. Because I know that like I tell people mine, they're like, what do you mean? Like your parents weren't there to like hold your hand through the whole process. And I'm like, yeah, like I had to figure all of this out on my own. I spent a lot of time crying, not sleeping, thinking maybe I shouldn't do this at all. But one of the positives I found is that there's nothing to compare myself to. Like, so like we are the ones paving the road for our families. So I guess that's pretty empowering to be able to do that.
I also think that first gens are very adaptable, like because we have to just figure it out. Like we're always on the move, like doing our best. All right, Jose.
Yeah, I would just echo everything that everyone has said, and then really just the willingness to ask questions, I think, was the number one thing. So like I was so used to not really knowing what the terminology was, and after a certain point of like being frustrated with not knowing or feeling like left out of the loop, like the ability to just ask questions and get the information that you needed so that you could be successful was something that really helped me and helped me find this line of work as well. Like being a first gen student, like I didn't know student affairs existed because I didn't know what college would be like. And so asking all those questions really helps to open doors and expand the worldview and, you know, just help you move along in the world.
Yeah. For sure. And I know that personally, it was also very hard for me to be able to kind of like put aside my pride and actually ask questions.
Yeah.
Because it was an environment in which I wasn't really too comfortable. So I had to just, I hate to say reach my breaking point, but like I'd get as far as I could. And then I'd be like, okay, I have to ask. Like,
I think another is like, we're at Miami, so obviously we're all pretty smart, and we're all used to being the best, right? At our high school, and then we come here, and everyone is used to being the best, and like it's hard to take a step back and be like, okay, I need to ask for some help right now because this is so new to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have another question.
So what advice would you give to prospective students that are first generation and consider Miami and or our current first gen students? Let's go ahead and start with Bre once again.
The advice that I would give students, I think, would be to seek out help, to also understand that you do belong here, that you can persist, that you can be successful, and that sometimes it's about defining success for yourself as opposed to other people defining what being successful is for you. I think that was one of the things that I had to figure out because Amber and Lindsey, I think you just referred to it. You're used to being the best and you get caught in this place and space of constantly comparing yourself. You're always comparing yourself to other people. And, you know, when you live in a residence hall and you're developing friendships, it's really hard not to do that. But I think taking a step back and realizing like, wow, this is a big deal that I've gotten this far, right? To even consider thinking about higher education and even graduating high school for some individuals. And so taking that next step to realize that there are resources available to you. Don't accept no as the final answer and continue to push through and ask questions and ask multiple people because sometimes it's not necessarily that you can't do it. Maybe you just need to do it and approach it in a different way.
I agree. And I also think every time I talk with another first gen, I'm like, it's just very important and imperative that you understand that you are just as worthy to be here as everyone else, regardless of finances, regardless of grades.
Yeah.
Like, you're here for a reason, and comparing yourself when it comes to minor and trivial things is not going to get you anywhere.
And I always say Miami wouldn't have accepted us as students if they didn't think we could do it. So it's hard, but you can do it. Okay, Kierra?
Yeah, so again, plus 1,000 on everything that Bre stated. I couldn't have said it better. I would also add two things. One, as a first generation student, your experiences have shaped your unique perspective. And because you're the first of your family, but also just you belong to this group of individuals who are exploring Miami with a different lens. So I would say have the courage to speak up. If you see something and it doesn't make sense, question it. Be curious. Question the system around you. Question the processes around you. Ask if you were going to tell someone else how to get to Miami, like how you would change the process to make it easier and more welcoming and inclusive for them. And then the second piece would be being first generation also means we usually belong to these other affinity groups, right? Like for me, it was being Black, Indigenous American, and a foster youth. And being the first also meant there were some things that I carried into being first generation, like wanting to take care of my family. I think Jose hit on it, right? Being so far away from your family. I was at 18, even without a college degree, the breadwinner for my family. I was working full-time to send money home. And something that I had to learn earlier on is how to put my own oxygen mask on first. You have to figure out the things that help you remain whole as a person as you're going through this experience and learning something new before you can kind of help others. And it's this delicate balance between, okay, now I've gotten my oxygen, how do I help everyone around me? But you've got to put your oxygen mask on first to be able to really be of service to others.
I think that's a powerful analogy, and I like that a lot. All right, Jose?
Yeah, I would just echo everything Bre and Kierra have said, and also just focus on finding your people and finding the places that can help make Miami home. So being away from home is really challenging, and navigating this newfound identity of being a first generation college student, you got to find people that will help you along in that journey. And like Kierra was saying, we also have a bunch of other identities that we're bringing to Miami, whether that be we're students of color, students with lower socioeconomic status, and stuff like that. And so that can also be an added layer of challenge that comes with being at Miami. I love my time at Miami, and also acknowledging, like, yes, that part was a little bit tougher too. And so finding those people that have similar identities and similar values and stuff like that becomes really important, so that you can build that network here to get your family away from your family, essentially, to help push you through these 4 years or 6 years or however long that you end up making it here at Miami, which is just, I wouldn't be here without the people that I met along the way. And so as soon as you can, when you're at the point, like your grades are good and stuff like that, like get involved and try to find those people.
I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Truly, like finding staff or other students that like relate to you and can teach you things other than just like normal coursework, like more like life lessons and that kind of thing. Very beneficial.
Okay, so our next question is, what have you done as an alumni to stay connected to Miami? So we're going to start once again with Bre.
My answer is a little bit, well, I guess maybe similar to what Jose's might be, but I came here and I never left. But I think the networking piece, what Kierra said, what Jose has said, has been critical for me. I started my professional career working at Miami right after grad school, left for 6 years, and then came back after that, and am now raising my daughter here. But a part of that has been because I had an incredible network of people around me. And so, every time I go somewhere, you know, I'm wearing something Miami and I'm able to connect with someone else. I'm having conversations. I'm remaining connected and in touch with people. Check-ins are really important. Those individuals who were mainstays for me when I was here as a student are still mainstays in my life. Gerald Yearwood, again, being one of those. Doug Green, he's now retired from Miami, but he was another one of those individuals. Faculty and staff members. I mean, it's incredible the way that people have supported me. And so I've stayed connected by staying connected to those individuals, but also I tried to make connections with students. So when I was away, I worked at a high school and I remained connected with students and then put them in touch with individuals at Miami as well. And so, you know, for me, it's kind of like giving back in a way and continuing to move the needle, because I also understand that as I'm bringing more students to Miami, those students are diversifying the student population in many ways as well.
I just love that. So thank you. Okay, Kierra.
Yeah, so a couple of different things that I'm really excited about that we didn't necessarily have. Like Instagram wasn't a thing when I was in college. I think it had just been created. So we didn't have these really cool social media channels to tap into and kind of see what's going on campus. So I would say a huge shout out to Seth, and to you all for these opportunities. So this is one way, right, where you stay connected and you network with other alumni and you get to come back and share your perspective, but also to hear the fresh perspectives of current students. I would also say I was a proud member of the Lambda Mu chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. So I still very much tap into the current events that they host. They just had a Pink Panther virtual event. I come back for Step Show when I can. I come back for homecoming. And so I do try to come back as often as I can to support the students on campus and also in other spaces like the Summer Business Institute, coming back and actually being able to use some of what I do for a living and coming back, and whether it's StrengthsFinder coaching or teaching courses on how to network. So I think there are so many channels and opportunities for alumni to come back. And it's awesome because whenever I share something on my social media network, like, hey, I'm coming back to Miami to speak, there's also a ton of alumni who see that and they're like, I want to come back and I want to give back. Tell me how to tap into those resources. So I think there's some really cool things that current students are doing that I'm really excited about. And I do hope that you all continue to provide these opportunities for us.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and Jose?
Yeah, so like Bre, I mean, I've been here since 2014, so I haven't left. And through each like sort of step that I've taken, like I've found ways to sort of give back and be involved. And so for me, it was about identifying like barriers that I had come across and actively sort of working to build out systems to help students so that transition could be easier. And so as a grad, that was working with Miami First and the Bridges Scholars and those LLCs in Emerson. And now I'm over in Heritage Commons, so I'm working with upper divisional students. So it's a little bit different, but staying involved in student life as a whole to sort of make sure that students' voices from a first generation perspective are still being heard, and having conversations and sort of being like the boots on the ground in this sort of way. Like I'm working directly with students, I'm helping mentor students, helping them through that transition when I can. And yeah, I mean, my job now is sort of to give to Miami and support those students and make sure that that journey is a little bit more smoother than it was when I had come through undergrad.
Yeah, I like that it seems like there's becoming more and more opportunities for alumni to stay connected, like as the internet becomes like a big thing. And I just wonder what it'll be like even in the future, like whenever I'm an alumni, like I hope it's even easier for me to stay connected. I think it's a really good thing.
So
Maybe this will never leave like Jose and Bre.
Yeah, maybe
You'll just stay forever.
with that.
They're giving me FOMO.
Yeah, just come back.
It's okay, we want you here.
You're always family. You went to Miami.
Okay, so we would like to know your favorite quote or motto that you live your life by, or if you don't really have one of those, like maybe maybe a habit that you think attributes. We can go ahead and start with Bre.
So mine is she believed she could, so she did. And it is like my favorite thing of all time. I'm currently a doctoral student, not at Miami, but currently dissertating. And that is something that I found, I mean, I've always lived by it, but I found a canvas of it in a store. And I was like, I need to have this in my room as an affirmation for myself, because literally every barrier that I've encountered along the way, I've managed to knock down. That's not to say that it hasn't come with some sort of imposter syndrome accompanied with it, but just a little bit of belief, and sometimes a little bit of other people's belief in me and telling me that they believed that I could help me get past that point and be able to kick the door down to get to the next point. So that's my favorite quote.
I love that quote so much.
Me too.
All right, Kierra, do you have any quotes or mottos?
I do. Mine, my favorite quote, really, and if you know me, you know that this is true. My favorite quote / mantra is do everything with love. A lot of times we talk about the hard things in life, and certainly we've all experienced some barriers and obstacles. But for me, love, people who have loved me, the love that I have for my community, the love that I have for others. I'm even in corporate America, like I've had several people who have worked for me, or that even I have worked for, that have said, I love you. And so one of my big pushes is normalizing loving the people around you and doing everything with love. And I ask myself every morning, and in every process that I create, in any program that I create, when I'm coaching executives and leaders, what does love look like? What does doing this with love look like? And it does have a significant impact and change kind of the decisions that I make. And even some of the decisions that others make because of that. So do everything with love is my mantra.
That is so inspiring.
I think that the world could use some more love.
Yeah, I feel like that's coming from a genuine place, and I love that. Like just doing everything with love.
Mm-hmm.
We love it.
And Jose, do you have a motto?
Yeah, not so much a motto, but in my time at Wilkes, we spent a lot of time like cultivating leadership styles and stuff like that. And so authentic leadership is something that I like to subscribe to, and showing up to places as authentically as possible, right? Like our identities and our stories and our experiences help dictate like where we are, how we've gotten there, how we show up in spaces and things like that. And so it's always my goal to show up as authentically as possible and talk about my stories. That's all good things, it's bad things, it's everything in between, because when you're your most authentic self, like you help others reach that point as well. And so in working with students, like if I'm vulnerable and practice that, it's more likely that students can too, and we can help get them to where they need to go. And it also works with professionals and friends and family members as well. And so showing up as who I am is really important. And I like to cultivate that in other people as well.
Yeah, that reminds me of what we talked about on Friday's panel. We mentioned that like a good way to be a leader is honestly to be vulnerable, because once you're vulnerable with people, they can be it back. All right, so we have a question from the audience, and it is, how can universities better support first-generation students? Bre, you want to start again?
Yeah, so the work that I do is diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as leadership. So I appreciate the vulnerability piece, because that's a huge part of being able to effectively lead groups, and also showing up as your authentic self. But I think a few things is that students can't be what they don't see. And so one of the things is that universities have to hire people who have similar lived experiences as their students to be able to connect and have as a connecting point. And then the other piece of it is, if we're going to recruit diverse populations of students, and that doesn't just mean racially diverse, right? That means different religions, that means different socioeconomic statuses and what have you, then we have to be able to have programs to support those students. And so I think Miami does a really good job of having the Student Success Center. We have the Bridges program. We have a multicultural center in the Center for Student Diversity and Inclusion. we have a lot of different resources to be able to support our students. I think that we need to continue to elevate those resources so that students are aware, but I think continuing to create programs to support first-generation students is key.
I really like what you were saying about like diversity as a whole and not just racial, because I feel like if all you see at Miami are like straight white rich men that are also Christian, it's like leaving so many people out, and it's like you don't see yourself. But I think that people are actively working on it, and it's just like really nice to see people like, I guess, of power, like that aren't what you would typically expect, that isn't like a straight white man. Like there's the diversity, like regarding even my professors. Like I love that because I didn't really have that at high school. Everyone was white. Like there was no, yeah, just diversity is very important.
Yeah, I agree. So we have yet another audience question.
Wait, we didn't ask Kierra.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Kierra, Jose.
Let's hear it.
That's okay. I'm loving going after Bre too. I'm like trying to take notes. Hopefully this is recorded so that I can rewatch this later. I would add to that. So creating mechanisms like this forum is a really great opportunity, I think, to source that feedback of what's going well, what's not, where do we have some opportunities to create more space for first gen students. And then once you've gotten that feedback, being very careful not to fall into the suggestion box pit, which is getting all of this great information and all of this feedback from first gen students and doing nothing with it. So then my next step would be, and in corporate America, I talk about this a lot in my day job, right? People know what you care about by what you create space for and by what you make a point to say is important for your organization. So as you're setting goals, as you're creating metrics for what success looks like, what does it look like to create better outcomes for first gen students? At every level of leadership at Miami University, this needs to be something that is first of mind, from the president down to the professors and how they're serving first generation students. So I would say get the feedback and then create mechanisms and opportunities to actually focus on it. And that's how you'll create better outcomes. One piece of how you'll create better outcomes for first gen students.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you, Kierra.
And Jose, how do you feel universities can better support first gens?
Yeah, that's Lola. Sorry.
Hi, Lola.
Yeah. So I would say like a good step is like celebration, right? So last year was the first year that we really had a whole campus-wide celebration for National First Generation College Student Day, and it was amazing. Like in the 5 years that I had been at Miami, like I had not really seen anything to that scale. And so I think celebration and acknowledgement of the identity is super duper important. I mean, even the title of this panel, right? It's about like not looking at it from a deficit, like we're assets to the university, and the first generation college student demographic is only going to keep growing. And so by acknowledging it, educating students so that they know that they're first generation college students too, because that's also an issue, is like you don't know first gen until someone tells you you're first gen, and educating continuing gen students, faculty, and staff as well is really important. And so celebration is key. Like we should be proud that we're here and the things that we're accomplishing, and not something that we should really shy away from or look at from a deficit perspective.
I remember last year, I did not know I was a first generation student until Amber told me. She was like, hey, they're like doing something to celebrate us. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, what did I do that I need to be celebrated for? Like, I didn't get it.
And now we are the president and vice president of the club on campus.
It's funny how that works. But we're working on making big in-person celebrations, but we can't right now for obvious reasons. But like we did our best, like doing stuff like this to celebrate students, like even if it can't be in person, we can like have alumni talk, and like we send out emails, and there's so many like organizations on campus wanting to help us and work with us, which I think is really nice as well.
It is. And I like what you said about being proud. Like I am so proud. And I feel like some may like initially view this as a weakness, but it's so the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is a strength. Like you are amazing coming this far. Like I don't know.
Yeah. You're all very inspiring as well.
Yes, there's that. Okay, we have our last question, which makes me sad, but it's a good one. So, what is your best advice for branching out and creating your own life after college?
Yeah, I need to hear this.
Yes,
advice,
and
so I'm
Bre,
listening.
we're ready for you.
So I was going to defer to Kierra because I feel like she probably has a better answer, but I'll go ahead and for the sake of maintaining order. I think that for me, I had to embrace the discomfort of the unknowns. So I did talk a little bit about the ambiguity of it all, but I had to embrace the fact that I didn't know what I was necessarily stepping into because, again, my parents had not gone this route. And my older brother, to be completely honest, who came before me, he hadn't graduated yet by the time that I graduated. So I was literally the first to try to do this, to make this transition out of college into the real world as a working professional. But I think embracing the ambiguity of it, understanding that it may not be linear, it may not be sequential, but there's opportunity for you to still use your network. The network of people who you established when you were in college, use those individuals to ask questions because they're working professionals. And so, taking one step at a time, one thing at a time, and realizing like you're going to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. And so I think I've really just taken an opportunity to bloom where I'm planted. And grow in that way and realize that there are things that I know and there are other things that I don't know, but there's time for me to learn those things.
Yeah, that's really nice. I like that you said it's not linear because I
It's
feel
not.
like everyone has that. When you're little, you have that like image in your head. You're like, I'll go to high school, graduate, 4.0, go to college, do really good, dream job.
And I'm pretty sure there's a theory for that. Isn't it like life course perspective, where it's like you're supposed to hit like these certain
goals, but everybody is so different.
It's so
and unique.
different.
You cannot compare yourself to people like that. You can't, like, I can't compare my like journey with Amber's because we're doing different things with our lives. So I like that you said that. Okay, so Kierra, do you have anything to say on it?
Yeah, so I would, again, two parts to my response. One, spend a lot of time discovering who you are. Understand what gives you energy, what might drain your energy, but keep giving yourself opportunities to experience new things that will shape your perspective and allow yourself to fail. A lot of times, first generation students, you're the first, right? And so with that comes a lot of freedom and comes a lot of responsibility that I think we place on ourselves of, I can't fail, I've got to do this. I know it was only probably about 6 or 7 years into my career where I finally just embraced, like, I'm going to fail. And when I started embracing, allowing myself to have room and space for failure, because that meant I was learning something new, I started skyrocketing in my career and I started allowing myself to experience new things. But I would say I was always grounded in understanding who I was and loving the things that were unique about me, whether it was my experience as a first-gen student, whether it was my experience as a Black woman in corporate America, really allowing myself opportunity to discover who I am. We are part of this global community and you're a part of these communities on campus, but I would say spend time meditating by yourself too. Understand the really unique perspectives and strengths that you bring to your organizations and your groups and your friendships. And then again, allow yourself space to fail would be my 2 pieces of advice that I would give.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I feel like I'm actually also on the process of doing that because I'm taking a research class that's required for social workers. And it's so the opposite of every way my brain works. And I'm like dealing with means and deviations. And I'm like, this is not for me. I want to be a social worker. Like, I can't do math. So it's just like challenging yourself and realizing that you're not going to be perfect at everything. Mm-hmm. You got to give yourself a break.
Yeah, and I like that you said to take time basically to figure out yourself and love yourself. I think that that's really important, and I think that a lot of young people struggle with that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that would help you get your career right, because once you figure yourself out, then it'll be easier, I think.
Yes.
And Jose?
Yeah, I would echo what everyone's saying. So this is my first year post being out of school and stuff like that. So my experience is a little limited. But I would just say like lean into the skills that you've built in college as a first generation college student. Like that doesn't go away necessarily. So yes, you were the first in your family to like go to college, but that also might mean you're going to be the first in your family to go to graduate school. And so those feelings will still sort of persist. And so lean into those skills that you've built and know that it's okay and just keep building on that. And so I know I relied on that in the 2 years that I was in my master's program, and I'm relying on it now, like navigating a resident director job in a pandemic, right? So like, it's okay to like be adaptable and to not know everything, and to not be afraid to ask those questions, and build the support network, so that you're able to do your job successfully.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think that was our last question.
I think Seth will come back on in a
Yeah.
second.
But I just want to go ahead and thank you all for coming, and our viewers as well. I think that
Yeah.
it's always so fun to do stuff like this.
And thank you to the viewers for asking questions. That means a lot to us as well.
Yes. But it's so fun and nice to be in the presence of people who have been where I am right now. Very comforting.
And motivational.
Yes. Seth, I think you're muted.
I was muted, sorry. Thank you again for today's event, and a big thank you to each of the alumni panelists for taking the time to be with us, and for the excellent moderating skills of Amber and Lindsey. You told me to put my mic back on. I invite you to keep all of our Alumni Association virtual events free and available to at alumlc.org/MiamiOH. And you also can find the recording of today's panel and other past webinars on the site, including the first gen alumni panel discussion from last Friday. There's on the lower screen there. So to learn more about Miami University's generations programs, please visit miamioh.edu first generation. Thank you again for participating and for watching, and love and honor.
Love and honor.
Thank you.
Thanks.